Good morning, guys. Well, Thanksgiving's almost here. In just a little under 2 weeks, we're going to be stuffing our faces with all sorts of food. I like Thanksgiving pretty well. It's probably my fourth favorite holiday, mostly because it's all about eating food with people that I really care about, friends and family and all that. And I really like, the typical traditional Thanksgiving food like dressing with cranberry sauce, turkey, mashed potatoes and gravy, and all the delicious pies that get made. My favorite pies are probably pecan and this chocolate cream pie that my grandma used to make. Though I really also like pumpkin pie with some whipped cream on top. Uh, what are some of your favorite Thanksgiving foods and Thanksgiving pies? Whatever they are, I hope you get some next week. And in case you were wondering what holidays I like better than Thanksgiving, Christmas is my favorite holiday. Then Halloween's my second. And then Valentine's Day is my third. Not because I like Valentine's Day, but because it's my birthday. So that makes it important to me. And then right after Thanksgiving, 4th of July would probably be number 5 because I really like fireworks. And in case you're wondering what this is, I don't know if you saw in the last video, but we put up some shelves on the wall. I recorded my oldest son Asher's room and we put some shelves up here on the wall. So if you're like, what is that white thing? It's a shelf on the wall. Anyway, let's do our opening together. Repeat after me if you'd like, or just do the hand symbols with me. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are the church of the open mind, the loving heart, and the helping hands. Together, we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in our world. Let's begin. Today, I want to talk about power. When you hear the word power, what do you think of? Uh, Maybe you think of a superhero like Superman or the Hulk, people who can punch cars into the sky. Maybe you think about the engine in a big truck or a ship, a really powerful machine that can move something huge. Or maybe you think about a big, powerful explosion. Those are all certainly different kinds of power, but that's not the kind of power I'm talking about today. The kind of power I'm talking about today is the power that all of us, including you and I, have to make positive change in the world and fight back against evil and injustice. What do you mean I have that kind of power? That's not true, you may be saying. And I'd have to answer back, yeah, you do. Let's talk about that today. There have been many times in the history of the world that, people have come forward and used their power to change things for the better. And we're going to talk about some examples throughout the history of America where ordinary people came together, combined their power, and made real change. I mean, when we first became the United States of America, it was because we came together and used our power together to tell England that didn't want to be one of their colonies anymore and wanted to be our own independent nation. England said no, and it unfortunately led to a war and a lot of violence, but we were fighting for a cause that all of us felt was right and just, to be free of England and to be able to live lives that weren't ruled by a king way across the ocean. Later on, more and more people were realizing that slavery was a bad thing, because it was, and they used their power to get the government to make changes that would stop the spread of slavery in America. It also unfortunately led to a war because a lot of people didn't want their slaves to be taken away. But when the fighting finally stopped, slavery had also been stopped in America. The power of good people had been used to stop something terrible, and the slaves were able to start enjoying lives as normal citizens instead of slaves. Though there were still some terrible people out there that did bad things to these, former slaves because they were angry they didn't have slaves anymore. After a while, the power of the people was used to get black people the right to vote so they could have their voices heard in elections, even though women still couldn't vote. But that changed, though, because enough people thought that was wrong, spoke up about it, and used their power to get women the right to vote in elections so that their voices, too, could also be heard. Black and Latino people in America weren't getting treated very well. They were being sent to bad schools, living in bad neighborhoods, and basically society was just being really bad to them. So they, along with a lot of white people, used their power, came together and used their power to get the government to pass laws so they could go to the same schools that whites were going to, live in the same neighborhoods that white people lived in, and enjoy the same freedoms that white people had. In all these examples, the kind of power that was used to make them right wasn't Superman swooping in and making everything better. It was a bunch of normal people like you and me coming together and saying that what was happening wasn't right and using their power to change terrible things. You and I have the power to make this kind of change too. We can do it by speaking up when bad things are happening, asking questions when someone tells you to do something that just seems wrong, joining protests against bad things like racism, or when you get old enough, voting and calling people like the mayor or your senator, people in power, calling them and saying, this is wrong, you need to change it. You can also show power by being a good example to people around you, being a good example of how to be a kind and respectful person. If you can spread good, positive feelings around you, those people that you spread those feelings to will then go on to spread good, positive feelings to the people around them, and it'll just keep going and going. Another thing that you may have noticed in some of the examples that I talked about earlier was that the power used to fight injustice sometimes also involved violence. The UU Church doesn't like to promote violence because violence isn't a respectful way to interact with another person, and it takes away another person's right to live their life the way they would like to. However, there are some times in which violence is the only way to fight against bad things, like with slavery. The people who wanted to keep slaves were willing to kill other people in order to not have their slaves taken away, and the others tried to talk to them and resolve it peacefully. However, it unfortunately turned out that the only way to finally get rid of slavery in America was to use violence in order to make it happen. The violence, though, wasn't used to bully people or to be cruel. It was used to save the lives of the slaves that were being kept. That's the way we should look at violence. Even if it's for a good, just cause, it should be the very, very, very last thing we try to do. We should always try to fight against evil and injustice without hurting others, because hurting someone else is not showing respect to the life of someone else, something that is very important to us in the UU Church. So even if you're mad and you're fighting against something you think is wrong and you're mad, you shouldn't, the first thing you should do shouldn't be to go in and start fighting and, hurting other people. That's not right. Use your words, use your compassion, and use your heart. Okay? Anyway, that's all I really have to say on that for today. I know last week I said that this week would be a more fun lesson, but that didn't turn out to be the case, did it? I'm sorry. I shouldn't try to make predictions like that. Who knows what my brain will want to talk about each week? I mean, I don't even know that. Anyway, this video is already pretty long, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. So, until next week, stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, don't pick your noses, and I'll talk to you soon. Later.